Okay, the 1969 Berkshire County UFO incident. This happened in Berkshire County, Massachusetts. Again, 1969. Okay, so what's the summary of what happened? This alleged UFO encounter / abduction story. It's very interesting because it involves several supposedly unconnected parties of people of varying ages in several different locations of the county, all on the same night, which was September 1st, 1969. In some instances, families were reportedly unaware that members of their own households experienced similar strange phenomena until years after the event in question. Contemporary reports of the incident were made to the local newspaper, but were not run due to the editors thinking that this was just a hoax.
Yeah.
The incident received widespread publicity when it was featured in a 2020 episode of the Unsolved Mysteries reboot on Netflix, which I highly recommend. First of all, I thought the Unsolved Mysteries reboot was all going to be like weird deaths, murder mystery stuff. And so I'm binge watching episodes with my wife. When this episode came on, I was so excited that we were getting a UFO Unsolved Mystery on Unsolved Mysteries.
I think I saw that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Erin was my wife. She was just beside herself. Like, you've got to stop. Settle down. Settle down. I told her, no. This is going to be awesome. It's aliens. Okay. Or was it? Was it aliens?
Right.
That's the question that I have. But let's go over exactly what happened. So there were 4 incidents that we're going to cover. Incident number 1. It's dusk. A woman named Jane Green was driving with her friend Mary DeGrace, now deceased, from Stockbridge to Great Barrington in Berkshire County. While driving, they saw several bright lights on the road ahead. At first, Jane thought the lights were from police patrol cars that were responding to an accident, but as they got closer, the lights became so bright that it forced them to pull over. In fact, there was a car in front of them, and that car had to pull over as well. Jane and Mary both exited their vehicle and were able to make out that the light was emanating from a massive object that hovered over the road. The object was so large that Jane had to turn her head from left to right to see the ends of it, and even then, she wasn't sure that she could see the ends of it. She recalled after the fact that it had no windows, made no noise, and in addition to being extremely wide, it was also incredibly tall. In just a few seconds, the object zigzagged into the air and was gone over the mountains. So that's incident number 1. Okay, so no abduction. It was just like an experience. We experienced this thing, bright lights, pull over, watch it zigzag up into the air and disappear. And apparently, the thing was enormous, whatever they saw, and super, super bright. Incident number 2. So this one freaks me out. On the night in question, 12-year-old Melanie Kirchdorfer and her family were headed to Lake Mansfield after picking up treats at the local Dairy Queen. As Melanie's father backed the car into a parking spot at the lake, their car was engulfed by a brilliant light, causing the whole family to panic. The light was not stationary, and Melanie's father decided to drive after it against severe protest from the rest of the family. Which I think I would probably do too. And I think Aaron would protest, but I would want to chase it also. So that's what he did. Melanie remembers levitating in her seat for a brief moment and then suddenly finding herself lying flat on her back inside of a strange vehicle. She recalls seeing other children lying by her, and one by one they vanished. She awaked to find herself alone at Lake Mansfield, and then she had to walk home from there by herself.
Yeah,
that's gnarly.
Yeah, that's the one I remember a lot from the episode you're talking about.
Yeah,
the Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah,
of her walking home and the other little boy that was like. Anyway, go on.
So, incident number 3, at around dusk of the night in question, 2 miles away from Lake Mansfield. So we're talking a distance from where Melanie was had her experience. 10-year-old Tom Warner was at his neighbor Jane Shaw's house. As it got dark, he looked out of one of the windows of the house and heard a voice say to him, "You need to go home now."
Yeah.
The voice was so startling, and Tom actually thought it was the voice of God telling him to do something, so he was in trouble. It was so startling that Tom ran scared out into the front yard, And soon after, Jane went outside and saw Tom running as fast as he could, but he wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
He was just running in place. At first, Tom didn't realize he was stuck in place, but once he did realize it, he looked to his left, saw something drop out of the sky, right, the UFO. Jane witnessed the UFO cast a beam of light onto Tom, forcing his arms behind him, and then suddenly Tom disappeared. Tom came to himself lying flat on his back inside of a strange vehicle. To his right lay a girl. Sometime later, Tom found himself lying flat on the opposite side of the Shaw property, still bathed in light from the UFO. His brother yelled from behind him to run away, but Tom yelled back that the beam of light was preventing him from moving. A voice told Tom, "I'll be done in a minute," which is creepy. I'll be done in a minute. Within a minute, the beam shut off and Tom was able to get up and witness the light source disappear. Jane Shaw recalled that the whole episode of Tom vanishing and reappearing took about 7 minutes. Sometime after the incident, Tom formally met the girl who was lying next to him on the craft, and it was Melanie Kirchdorfer. Right? Which was incident number 2. So he met Melanie Kirchdorfer after the fact. They didn't know each other beforehand, but he recognized her sometime later, and they introduced each other, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, that happened to you, and that happened to me too." Interesting.
Yeah. And he's the one, I think, from, I remember the interviews, he's never gotten over like what happened.
No.
You know, he really has a lot of issues to this day of going on. Tom Warner, I think. But let's go to the fourth incident.
Both him and this next guy.
The next guy, yeah.
So this next one, incident 4, at 8:30 p.m. on the night in question on the Sheffield Bridge, which is about 6 miles from Great Barrington, which is where Jane and Mary DeGrace were, the Reed family, including Nancy Reed, her mother, and her 2 sons, Tom and Matthew, encountered a massive white glowing object rising into the sky above the Housatonic River. While in the sky, it fired beams of light. On the opposite side of the car, a large orange glowing sphere could also be seen in the sky. The white glowing object disappeared, and suddenly an enormous white glowing turtle shell-shaped object, which Tom has since estimated to be around 100 yards wide, could be seen overhead. The turtle shell bathed the Reed's car in light, and the next thing they knew, the light was gone. The family was in the car, and 4 strange things were observed. Nancy and her mother had mysteriously swapped seats.
Places. Yeah.
Now, the mother, being elderly, never drove.
Right.
So this was weird that grandma was suddenly in the driver's seat. So that was the first thing. Second thing, the car was now turned off even though it was on when the episode started. Number 3, somehow 3 hours had passed and the family had no idea what happened during that time. And then lastly, they were parked in front of a drugstore 1.5 miles away from the bridge.
Yeah. And I remember in the story, because it's almost like they just wake up and they're all like, "Where are we? What's going on?"
Yeah. We lost 3 hours. We've been dropped off or whatever. We're a mile and a half away in front of a drugstore.
Do you think one of the alien commanders up there is like, "Damn it, you put him in the wrong place, man"?
I'm reminded of that Pixar animated short where it's the alien. It's called Lifted.
Yeah.
Where there's like the alien trainee who's trying to practice abducting people and he keeps getting it wrong. So that's what that reminds me of. It's like you abducted them just fine, but you dropped them off in the wrong place.
Quinn, I was watching your funny faces. Not your face is funny, but you were giving a funny face as we were talking. So, what were your thoughts on the weird story, especially the last one? You were all like,
I don't know, just that this is just, I don't know, just kind of messed up. Did they not, like, you said they didn't talk to each other? None of this was like discussed for a while?
No, so we'll kind of go over what happens, how like all these people sort of get connected. Actually, right now, the aftermath was first there was the radio station, the local radio station, WSBS. Jane Green and Mary DeGrace, after they experienced their thing on the bridge, they hurried to the drugstore that was owned by Jane and her husband, where they told Jane's husband the whole story. He told Jane to go to the local radio station and report what they had seen.
but the guy didn't believe him, right?
Tom J., the station director, didn't believe them and turned them away. But in the coming hours, the radio station became inundated with reports from all over the county. And even from a town in the neighboring state of Connecticut, with sightings of the strange objects. Most of the parties that contacted the radio station, they had no personal connections. Second thing in the aftermath revolves around the Sheffield Police Department. So reports were made to the chief of police about the strange objects taking off from the fields around Sheffield, but the chief of police didn't believe them.
Right.
Accordingly, there were no law enforcement investigations into the matter. Third thing, this revolves around the Reed Diner. So the diner that was owned by the Reed family, those were the people who experienced the 3 hours and they traveled 1.5 miles without knowing it. So the diner owned by the Reed family became a central area of discussion regarding the previous night's events. On the morning of September 2nd, WSBS radio station began broadcasting the various stories that were reported from the night before, and the radio station at the Reed's diner was tuned into the news while patrons ate their breakfast. So this is kind of how the story spreads and people start realizing, oh, other people in the county experience this thing that sounds like it's connected to what I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it
in a
revolved
very
around
short
the diner.
time period too.
Yeah.
All of them are all really pretty close together.
Yeah,
so.
all on the same night on September 1st, 1969.
The one that freaked me out though was watching the boy and seeing him running like as fast as he could, and he's just there in place, and then he's just gone. Like that's the girl as the babysitter's watching him. Wasn't she just right next door to his house? Right? He was being babysat right next door to where his home was.
Yeah, he was just coloring in a coloring book or something, and he noticed it was getting dark, and that's when everything happened to him.
Mm-hmm. Thought it was God's voice.
Thought it was the voice of God.
So he ran outside.
Okay.
Yep.
So lastly, regarding the aftermath of all of this, is the Great Barrington Historical Society. Widespread knowledge of the UFO incident that came from the September 2nd radio broadcast and the popularity of the Reed's Diner ultimately led to the incident being officially recognized by the Great Barrington Historical Society as an, this is a quote, an off-world incident historically significant and true. So, some thoughts. Tom Reed claims he was visited by UFOs twice before this incident.
Oh, yeah.
Twice. The first, he claims, occurred when he was 6 years old. And I have to ask, how well could a 6-year-old comprehend or remember something like that? Mm-hmm. Like, I think about significant things that happened when I was 6 years old that I know happened because I know that I was in first grade. Right. So I knew that, I don't remember though. Yeah. Certain things that occurred. There even traumatic experiences that my friends after the fact would remind me about. Like apparently I was scolded so bad by a nun once that I was like brought to tears in front of my class. Didn't remember it, and you would think that I would. So how well, or could it have been a bad dream that he had and he thought he was abducted? But for whatever the reason, Tom Reed claims he was abducted twice. Yeah. And he's been on Ancient Aliens several times to talk about his experiences. So, but here's another thought though. Jane Green. Jane Green is perhaps the most credible of the witnesses. First of all, she was one of the oldest that had something happen to her, who's still alive now. Mm-hmm. So she has only appeared on camera for the Unsolved Mysteries episode, that, as far as I can tell. And she's not tried to make a name for herself in relation to her encounter. And for what it's worth, shortly after the Berkshire episode aired on Netflix, 4 of the world's leading body language experts reviewed her confessional footage and found her to be highly credible. So that panel included Scott Rouse, Greg Hartley, Mark Bowden, Chase Hughes. These are all like U.S. military, DOD behavior analysts. And they were like, yeah, it sounds like what she's saying is she's at least being truthful. Interestingly, when Jane Green was contacted by producers of the Netflix show, she learned from her sons that they had similar experiences to hers on the night of September 1st, 1969. But none of the Greens had shared their experiences with each other until the Netflix project was being produced.
I remember that too, actually.
Yeah, because they thought no one will believe me, so they kept
They just saw something, I think, if I remember theirs.
Yeah. So, assuming the witness reports are true, what are some explanations of what happened that night? Was the incident of visitation by an actual otherworldly craft that abducted some residents? Was the 1969 Berkshire incident a visitation of earthly experimental crafts that kidnap people, essentially, from around a U.S. county, was the incident of visitation by supernatural entities. Mm-hmm. That's the question that I really have after thinking about this one a lot. It seems like this is one of those incidents where you could go, okay, maybe people had these experiences and the experiences were genuine and they're attributing it to something that it isn't. Mm-hmm. Like, does it need to be little green men abducting people into their spacecrafts? Right. Or could this be actual, like,
and
a
I don't
supernatural
think any
demonic
of them saw
thing?
Any of the beings.
No.
They heard the voice, the one guy.
No.
But
what you get are lights in the sky. Big, right. Massive wheeling lights in the sky. Right. It just seems
like a massive object.
Yeah.
But, when you think of God seen by the prophets in his vision and he's in his chariot throne, he's enormous. You could see, like, the pride of the demons to sort of make themselves appear super.
Yeah.
One thing I always wondered, though, is...
Or the wheel in the sky?
Where are all the other kids? Like, did they come back and not remember? Because remember, he saw lots of kids in that room, not just he and the girl. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder where they came from, who they were. Yeah. Did they even remember what happened or what's going on with that?
Or if it's demonic, what's the point of this? That's kind of the question that I have regardless of what the entities are. Mm-hmm. What's the point of basically kidnapping people, having them lie flat for a while, and then putting them back somewhere?
Yeah.
Is it just to terrify and cause uncertainty about faith or something? Or... You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, what else could it be? Like, why would you do it?
I mean, that could be very good because the reality is as traditional faith goes down, belief in a lot of these things like cryptids and UFOs and everything is like skyrocketing. We've talked about that a lot. So, or just alien fishing expeditions. Got one? Oh, you got to catch and release, buddy.
Release it back? Do you think that's what they're doing with us? We're just like a sport for them?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But we've talked about these kind of things before. None of them went into great detail. I can't remember the I think is it Tom Reed is who was the boy when he was was that
Tom Reed and the other Tom Warner.
Yeah, Tom Warner I think is the one I'm thinking of. And
that poor guy was abused. Like, basically he was harassed by his friends and he had to move.
Yeah.
Because of this story, Yeah,
and I just and we've talked about that before. For if it's an quote advanced civilization, why do so many of these abduction stories do such horrific things, medically or whatever else when even our level of technology can avoid a lot of the things they do. It's either like they enjoy doing it or something else is going on that we're not aware of. But
so if you had to, I don't know what I think it was. I actually think that this one... So we've talked about Rendlesham Forest. That one, more and more, I go, okay, that's probably... There's more hoax to it than truth. The fantastical elements are mostly embellished. In this case, I actually believe, mostly because of Jane Green.
Yeah.
I believe her and her accounting of what it was. She never mentions... that she truly believes that these are aliens and stuff, but that there was something.
Right.
There's something that I experienced. It was a really big, bright light in the sky that zoomed away, I wonder. Audience, let us know in the comments what you think. But I think that there was some sort of visitation by something. I think that the experiences on this one are actually legit, and I don't know if this was otherworldly or if it was spirit worldly. You know what I mean?
I agree too. I think I'm kind of coming from the same place. There were a lot of witnesses. First of all, some are individuals, but two of them are groups.
And this wasn't like Rendlesham where it's like, oh yeah, well there was a Russian satellite. Oh well, there was a lighthouse, and this was all over the county.
Yeah, so I come down pretty much the same as you. I don't know what it was, but I'm pretty sure something real happened to these people. And even if some of the people later elaborate things like, well, I had two previous ones, part of that I can almost chalk up to almost like a weird traumatic way of trying to see things or dealing with this event. So that doesn't throw me off at all from what he actually experienced that night, and all the and you know, like the babysitter witness and the fact that they were switched in the car and all 4 of them agreed to that. You know, it's just, I think there's too much to be able to say it's all these people are just making it up.
Yeah.
Especially because a lot of them, it kind of ruined their lives, or they kind of hid from it, or...
I guess the historical society that authenticated it, they went and did a lot of research with all of the people that had reported things, and they came to the determination that something legitimately happened.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like Justin said, say what you think it is in the comments. Maybe we'll look at those, and if there's enough of a interest, maybe we'll come back to it, say what people said, maybe get some more discussion on this. But
Jane Green, email us.
For now. All right.
Cheers.
So if you enjoyed what you saw, be sure to hit the like button and be sure to subscribe and see more videos like this.